Is that a workers' comp claim? Watch out, Dan, I got Boink.
If I put my head in the way, that won't hurt.
Oh shoot, it's on YouTube too.
Yeah, it is. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Village of Vernon Plan Commission meeting. I will call the Plan Commission to order with the Pledge of Allegiance and a standing moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Roll call and open meeting law compliance check.
President Carl Fortner,
Present.
Trustee Jim Sloney,
Present.
Commissioner Dan Nowak,
Present.
Commissioner Mario Rinaldi,
Present.
and Sean Malarkey, our zoning administrator. Are you here?
I'm present.
Mr. President, I just wanted to let you know also that the agenda was posted inside and outside the Village Hall on the Village's website. You're in full compliance with the open meetings law.
Thank you. First up on the agenda is discussion of conceptual land division for Porterville LLC, located on S103W26400 Maple Avenue, tax key as printed. I think they're here. Ellen Porter is here. I see her. If you could come up, that microphone is on. Sean, why don't you kick us off? Porterville, you were here in August, as I recall, coming back for October for another conceptual land review.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So yeah, it was back in August. We looked at a conceptual review for Porterville LLC for basically to split a 5-acre parcel on their property off of Maple Avenue. The property is zoned a combination of rural residential and then AD10, so 5-acre density and 10-acre density. The smaller parcel was the 5-acre, and then the one to the north was the 10-acre zoning. After the sort of the results of the meeting, the Plan Commission was, from my recollection, was generally okay with the proposed layout in the 5-acre parcel. Some of the comments that were made included there are 2 parcels along Maple Avenue that are owned by family members, and they were smaller than the zoning requires for those. And the comment was made, well, if you can enlarge those as part of the process, that'd be great. It's not absolutely necessary, but if you could do that, that'd be great. The other thing was basically had to do with the accessory buildings. If you look at the overhead, we had all the accessory buildings kind of outlined. Here's the house that would go with the 5-acre parcel, and then some of the buildings. And it was at the end of the meeting, it was generally accepted that building 1, which is here, which is the shed, the garage, which is building 2, and then building 5, which was the mechanics building in the back. Those would all stay. Those buildings would meet for a 5-acre lot, they would meet the size requirements and the number requirements for a 5-acre lot, so that was okay. The petitioner originally wanted to keep some more or all of the buildings through a waiver, and the Plan Commission basically said if you wanted to do that, there'd have to be some kind of financial guarantee that those would either be removed at the time the petitioner or the new buyer would buy the property or removed. And so the petitioner at the time agreed to just keep the ones we talked about. The rest would be removed prior to signature and recording of the CSM. And that's where things were left. I know they'd even they hired a surveyor and started a survey for the 5-acre parcel. I've seen it. It hasn't been brought forward to the Plan Commission, but in lieu of that, they've changed their mind, or at least are exploring other opportunities. And so there's a new concept here for a 10-acre parcel. Essentially, the 5-acre parcel was smaller. They're now expanding it further to the north. For a 10-acre parcel, it's my understanding, and the petitioner can elaborate on this, that there was a potential buyer or is a potential buyer for a 10-acre lot, and with the idea to keep more of the accessory buildings that are in the property and to restore some or all of those accessory buildings. So that's the current plan. In this case, if it's a 10-acre lot, we can rezone the whole thing to AD10 rather than having the split zoning. Remember, we talked about last time with the 5-acre and then the remainder. It would have been sort of split between the two. Now the whole thing can be zoned AD10, which there's something nice and simplistic about that. So that would work fine. My concern, I guess, my only concern with this really has to do with the strip of land on the west side of the property. So if you can see, the 10-acre now goes pretty deep. We have this strip that comes here on the west side. The petitioner wants to keep that because Porter Brothers, associated with the family but not the same members as the 2 LLCs, needs to have access because that parcel back there is landlocked. So they're going to have access. They have access now. They'll continue to have access through that, and so they left this strip there. But at some point in time, the idea is that this may be developed, so we got to be cognizant of how this will develop in the future. And this strip was left even with the 5-acre concept when it was just a smaller parcel, but there was less of a strip there, so it wasn't as much of a concern if that little bit didn't get developed in the future. It could have been green space or something or other. This zoning district allows, it allows you to cluster development and allows lots as small as 1 acre in size. And so you could theoretically in the future get a road through there and then also get 1 acre lots. They wouldn't necessarily be they wouldn't be shaped the way they normally are with, a little bit narrower. And they get, so basically the ratio of a desirable lot is basically the width is half the dimension is the depth, right? That's a 1 to 2 relationship of a general 1 acre lot. Get a nice big backyard and so on. These would be more square lots because of the shape with a road through there. You could theoretically do that, but as you recall, there's some topography challenges on the west side. There's a depression over there. And so I don't know in terms of engineering, no one's looked at that obviously to determine if that can be done, in relation to the properties to the west of the parcel. So it's kind of up for debate whether or not those could be developed into lots in the future. It's possible. It also could be green space if the rest is developed, and that's set aside. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a concern of mine, but it's something to consider because it is, a fairly narrow strip of land that's left over on the west-hand side. The only other thing I mentioned is with respect to the accessory buildings. If we're going to keep more of the accessory buildings, a 10-acre lot allows enough square footage to keep all the buildings. That's not an issue. But our limit is 2, according to the zoning ordinance. So a waiver would have to be granted to keep those additional buildings. That can be done. But again, we're back to the same issue as before, where there's got to be some kind of guarantee that those will either be the ones to be removed will be removed, or the ones that are supposed to be fixed up will be fixed up by the new buyers, because that's the intention to, through keeping them. So honestly, the best way to do that is some kind of a financial guarantee put in place that says, hey, and a deadline that says within so many years, these are going to be fixed up or torn down with money put up to make sure that happens. So that's really all I have. I guess we can discuss it or ask the petitioner to add additional information if they have it.
So, Ms. McKenzie, you're here. Could you just introduce yourself and state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, I'm Ellen Porter McKenzie, and presently we are living in the Indianapolis area, 7158 Walnut Creek Crossing, Avon, Indiana. And my brother, Robert, is here. He is representing Porterville also. We want to move forward with the sale of the 10-acre parcel and the buildings that have been presented. We have interested buyers who want to move ahead with this process too. So we have 2 interested buyers, one that has made an offer. Importantly, both want the property with the barn intact. A structural engineer from Zeracon has inspected the house and the barn, and I have an 18-page report from the person that is the instructor, or the engineer that has taken a look at the structures, and I'll hand that out in just a minute. One of the things that I want to talk about, because it might have been confusing to some of the people that received this, if this looks familiar and you're wondering why in the world did I receive this, but it is a document that I wanted you to take a look at. It's a copy of the 1993 article from the Waukesha Freeman identifying the Porter Farm as the oldest operating farm in Waukesha County. In the article, it speaks to our grandfather receiving a land grant from President Tyler in 1844. We have a copy of this land grant signed by President Tyler. The farm may not be operating today, but it has 5 generations of operating family farmers. After 178 years, this farm qualifies as an historic landmark for the Waukesha County Historical Society. We may pursue the historic landmark. However, if we do, it'll slow down the selling process. And obviously, if we have 2 people who are interested in buying the property and they want the barn intact, that's what we want to pursue. The structural engineer, which is Matthew Soine, he represents Zeracon, and he's the one that has provided this structural report in regard to the barn and the house. And I'm going to pass that out in just a moment. One of the things that I want you to pay attention to on this is pages 16 through 18. because those pages have his conclusions and what he sees as an opinion, and then an assessment on what can be done to the property. So I will give it to the board president, and then he can peruse it, and then give it to other individuals that may want to take a look.
Should we get a copy? Yeah,
Okay.
let's make a copy. Copies for everybody, I guess. Or a scan if you want to buy a computer. Now, you heard what Sean,
Yes, I did.
do you agree with everything Sean was?
I do,
teeing up?
yes,
Okay, good.
I do.
So you're looking just to, as far as the buildings, you said the barn was important, but there's other buildings. So what is going to be happening with the other buildings?
Okay, so there's a house, too.
Yes.
And the individuals want to reconstruct the house, and they've, again, one couple has already put in an offer on it, so they're very serious about what they're doing.
But the other, so there's I don't know, there's 13, I think we identified 13 buildings in the property. So of the ones that were going to stay anyways, the shed, the mechanics and the garage, the only other building that's staying is the barn, or are there others besides
The barn and the house.
Right, but
Yes.
the four that we already identified,
Yeah, and the
Plus-
silos will be there because they are attached too.
okay.
And
but-
then I think there are 2 grain bins that are there.
Right,
so-
right. I guess my question is,
Mm-hmm.
which buildings are staying and which are going? Are they all staying now?
All staying.
Okay, that's the question.
What is the purpose of keeping all the buildings?
The purpose of keeping all the buildings is, that's what the people who are offering to buy the property, they want all the buildings on that.
Well, at first I heard they wanted the barn, but
Well, because that was an issue at the earlier meeting, that the barn had to be torn down. So these people want the
No.
barn.
No,
didn't
I
think
think the
so.
issue was, I think it basically was posited that the barn was in such rough condition, or a lot of these buildings were in such rough condition that they should or had to come down anyways. That's what you guys had said, was that they're in bad condition, they're gonna have to come down. And the next buyer is gonna take them down, whoever that may be. And so that's just the question. Now it sounds like they're not coming down. They may not be in as bad a condition as maybe you thought.
Yes, exactly. Sean, what happened is we had people come in and cut all of the trees down that were around the buildings, giving us access to actually go in the buildings and see the kind of condition that they're in.
Okay.
And we discovered that the barn is it's in the report, but it talks about how it is in very, very stable condition, and definitely it is serviceable, and it can be something that is going to be improved upon. So it's in those 16 to 18 pages where he gives his comments on not only the house, because he's taken pictures of all of the rooms in the house, and as one real estate agent had said, as she walked through, she said, this house needs a lot of love. There's no denying that. That is a factual statement. But he gives suggestions on how all of I'm talking about the house and the barn, how those can be improved and why they need to remain standing and can be improved.
Do you have a sense of what the new buyer plans to do with all the buildings, since they were ag buildings at one point? This won't be a farm when it's, I'm assuming, when it's sold as a 10-acre parcel.
Okay, so the individual that has been dealing with him, who's a family member, I have not had access to and talked with them directly, but the information that I've gotten is they want to remodel the house, and then as far as the barn is concerned, they have some horses, and I don't know how many horses, but they have some horses that they would like to put on the land too. So I'm thinking that possibly in the barn there'd be accommodations made for some horses.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just checking dimensions here. We require anything with livestock to be at least 50 feet away from adjacent property lines. It looks like that won't be an issue for the barn. So that's good.
what concerns me is the number of buildings, like grain bins. Are they going to be using them for grain, or are this going to be an agricultural? property?
Again, that's something that I can't answer. They
Right.
did state, though, that they wanted all of the buildings.
Right, that's kind of part of the issue, right? I mean, the limit is 2, right? This is an historic property, and and over time it was, it was used for ag purposes. It's not anymore, but it's someone's. We don't know who's going to buy it, what they're going to use the buildings for, and so what has to happen is a waiver has to be granted for all these buildings, but we don't know what the intent of the use of all the buildings is, and I think that's what some of the problem might be.
Well, and then I would think it would be up to our building inspector to take a review of all those buildings to see what shape they're in. Should they be condemned, or they need to be repaired? Are they fit for humans to walk in?
Right, you just had an inspector, or your potential buyer had, who ordered that inspection, the buyer or you?
The buyer.
The buyer. The buyer has an inspection of the house and the barn, but not the other 11 buildings or structures. Part of our issue is there's like Sean mentioned, there's 2 building limit. And so to get a waiver, we would just say, the first time you were in, you said these buildings aren't repairable, they're gonna be come down, and now they wanna save them all, which may be okay, but there should be some kind of proof that they are repairable and can be saved, as opposed to they should be demolished. And then secondly, we'll need to know use. They're not going to be used for ag. You mentioned possible horses.
Right.
That's setback, but you check that.
Is
Right,
that,
right.
excuse me, is that 2 outbuildings regardless of the acreage?
Yeah, if it's ag use, it's different, right? If it's solely ag use and it's actual farm, that's not the same thing. But for residential accessory buildings, it's 2 buildings regardless of acreage, unless there's a waiver granted, right? The square footage, the 10 acres can handle all the square footage. They just
Right.
can't handle the number of buildings. So, and we're making a new lot now, so that's when all this comes into play. If they weren't making a new lot, and they were if you're just selling the 7-acre lot as is, we wouldn't know, we wouldn't care. But because you're creating a new lot, that's when we have to look to the ordinance and say, hey, here's the rules for a lot.
The important thing is it's going to be residential, and whether somebody states an intent or an interest, bottom line is the classification, right? As residential as
As what the
opposed
property
to
is
a
used
farm?
for, yeah.
Or is it influenced by how it's actually used?
Well, it's actually influenced by the district, I think, and this is not even this is no longer in a district like the ag district that would allow that even. So they're grandfathered in at this point under the current lot, the current use. But once we start to change things, that's when it comes into play.
And so, as written, it's 2 accessory buildings in addition to the house.
Yeah, I mean, but the out is you can, if you feel like it, you grant a waiver.
Anything.
You can grant any number you want or any total square footage you want because we have the ability to grant waivers.
But it's not a square footage issue at all.
No,
given that
it's not a square
10-acre
footage. It
parcel.
was with the 5-acre, but now with the
Yeah.
10. It's just a number issue. So if you had a mind to say it's a good thing that these are all going to be, improved and some of them used, maybe some of them not used, but improved to keep the rural aesthetic, right? And that's a good thing, then you might consider granting a waiver. But again, the sticky point in my mind is, making sure that happens in terms of improving them or not. And so how do you do that? How do you make sure that they actually get improved? And so that would take some kind of an agreement and I think a financial guarantee. That the financial guarantee would be if it doesn't happen by the deadline, they get removed and the money that's put aside is used to do that.
What are you considering a financial guarantee, Sean? Is it like a bond or?
Something, whatever the village would be amenable to. Or cash,
Looking
cash,
at looking at the report, it seems like the The barn is in pretty bad shape.
I haven't looked at it yet.
I just flipped through it and
Oh, on
the
page,
the barn's going to be rebuilt is what the recommendation is. If I
Well-
I didn't study it, so, I mean,
Well-
it looks to me like it's in such bad shape, it's going to be effectively rebuilt and parts of it simply demolished.
well, needs a whole new roof.
One of the statements that is made in there is that the house foundation is serviceable, and it's under serviceable conditions. The barn foundation is structurally sound with no excessive settlement. The barn can be saved. Those actual words are written there.
Which page is that? I'm just paging through it. now.
I believe it's on the last page.
17,
Yes.
number 14.
Right, he's talking about the foundation.
The barn foundation is structurally sound at this time. I don't see where it could be saved, and it's,
I think there's an actual statement there that the barn can be saved.
Number 20, it says despite all the deficiencies of barn, it is.
okay.
Opinion it can be saved. Obviously, that's an opinion. But, you read 19, the north addition should be demolished. You read 18, the roof structure is bearing vertically at the top but the horizontal thrust is present. This is causing, 17, the barn's roof has far exceeded its lifetime, requires a full replace. 16, other rotten wood floors, wall boards, rotted joists also need to be repaired and replaced. I mean, it's,
Take a lot of work, but it could be done.
right. And obviously, when you redo these things, the foundation is critical, and that's really what he's looking at. The foundation is sound, and you're gonna rebuild the barn on top of it. It's, without studying it, this is just handed out, so we don't, and this only is the barn, but there's 11 other buildings. And to Sean's earlier point, and I think our plan commission's point is, well, this is conceptual review, and we're supposed to provide feedback. I don't know that the 10 acres is particularly bothersome, Sean, or to the plan commission members. That part of it is, I think it's more of the buildings and the waiver, and whether that waiver should be even granted, and what's the plan for the buildings as far as fixing them all up or tearing them down?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and I don't obviously make the decisions, but I mean, it would be nice to have the buildings fixed up and add to the real character of the village. I think that would be something that would be admirable. But what's the guarantee that's going to happen?
Well, or the guarantee that it's gonna happen or that it can happen in the first place. I mean, the barn is the barn. I mean, you got a report here, but not a report on all the other buildings.
Right. Now, to play devil's advocate, you could still grant a waiver to save all the buildings and not require a financial guarantee, no agreement, just hope for the best and say, hopefully the buyer gets it and fixes them all up. And if he doesn't happen to do that, well, then it's essentially the same thing as it is now, right? Nothing changes.
Well, I have to honestly say that the buyers, their intent is to move in. And obviously, as you've taken a look at the pictures, if their intent is to move in, they can't move in with it in the condition it's in right now, so.
The house.
Yes,
Yeah,
the house. And one of the things that's in that report is with the roof in the barn, there's so much leakage, that's got to be taken care of also, because there's rotting that's occurring as a result of the rain that's coming in through the holes in the roof. So that is another thing that needs to be repaired right away. These buyers are very, very intent on buying the property.
What I'm saying is if the waiver goes on, it doesn't get improved, and it's the way it is now, then, it's nothing, it's no different than the current situation. We're trying to make it
Well-
better because we're approving a new lot and all that stuff, but
Well, we're approving a new lot, but we're also trying to get the question is, do you give them a waiver for the buildings past two?
Right, right. And if they don't get approved, well, that's terrible, but it's not, it's no different than the current situation.
Can you limit that in the waiver itself? Like it's only good for 2 years or something of that nature?
I don't know if you can limit the waiver. We'd have to the approval and the granting of the waiver would have to require an agreement that has to be hashed out to do that with the financial guarantee, if that's what you want.
Because there are two issues here. One is just expanding the lot and dedicating the road. I don't know if that was in this one or not, and then there's after the sale issue, okay?
Right.
Which is, we got to look at it as one thing, although any place that we have here is always subject to sale,
Right.
So in my mind, I don't really have a problem with it if there was some way to limit the validity of the waiver.
You can do that. I mean, you wouldn't even have to do the financial guarantee. You can just say the waiver is based on you doing what you're saying
They're
you do
either
within 3 years, but
fixed
then
or
there's
torn
no
down.
teeth. There's no teeth, and then 3 years comes and goes, and if it's not done, there's no mechanism to tear it down except zoning violations, and then you go to this court and all that stuff that happens.
The number of structures, we talk about 13 buildings or structures. If half of those are silos, as an example,
Yeah.
I don't know if that was count, I assume
Still a
that was
building. Still a
counted.
building. Yeah. It still
You know.
counts as a building.
Just buildings, or does it include the silos?
A silo would, under our code, be considered a building because it has a roof designed to protect stuff.
So Sean, does our accessory building ordinance apply to agricultural properties?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but there's exceptions for ag
Use.
use.
So could they possibly use this 10-acre parcel for ag? And
They could, and if you wanted to let them do that, just grant the waiver, and then there's no questions at all.
Well, the waiver could, I don't even know if it has to say so, but I would logically think if it's ag use, it's already covered. I'm trying to think in terms of what's for sure, because anything can still happen. It could sell next week, next year, whatever. Their intent could be this, somebody else's intent could be that. Whatever we do, we have to kind of think broadly. I mean, to me, the number one thing is make sure nobody gets hurt,
So the accessory building requirements and the number and so on don't apply to the B1, B2, none of the business districts, the manufacturing districts. That's all handled through site plan of operation. Don't apply to the P1 district, the AB district, or the AE district. So the ag districts. So because this is zone 8010, it's not part of that, right? It's under the existing use. If it was a farm currently, it would be grandfathered in. They already exist, but because it's a new lot, because it's not zoned one of those districts, the 2 applies unless there's a waiver granted.
so the 2 applies no matter what.
Unless there's a waiver granted.
Well, 2 still applies and the waiver's like on top of it.
Right, if they wanted to just have 2, they wouldn't need a waiver, they could just say.
Right.
And the 2 is accessory buildings, the house is the
Right.
house.
Right.
The barn could be one accessory building and some other garage shed, whatever that they pick. But that leaves 11 buildings, no, 10 buildings, sorry.
Well, one of them is attached. The garage is actually attached to the house with a breezeway, so it counts as one single building.
So that's one building,
Yeah.
okay?
Then it was the garage, the house as one. It was the shed and then the mechanic's garage. Those are the ones that were going to be saved, and the rest were going to be removed. Now they're all going to be saved. So I don't know.
Well, in the beginning, we were going to save buildings 1, 2, and 5.
Right. and the house.
Why has that changed?
That's changed because we have decided to add another 5 acres on, and it's changed because we have 2 people that are buyers, and they want that property with the barn. Both of them do,
Well, you keep saying the barn, but there's
and the
a
house too. Yeah.
there's a lot of other buildings there.
Well, again, they've specifically said that they want the barn,
So if we allow them to have the barn, all the rest of them can go?
So I would say to that, in the meeting that we had in August, that we identified the ones that were going to be remaining,
Right?
and that the house and the barn, then with the additional 10 acres, would be something that we would continue to have. The silos are just simply silos. I see no reason why those silos would have to be taken down. I honestly don't. They are part of the character of that farm.
No, it would be
It's,
easier for me if I had some feel for the condition of these. I mean, I agree that the silos probably provide some character. If they're not an eyesore, if they're not likely to injure someone or fall down or hit something.
I think there's like 6 silos out there, is that right?
You know what, Bob, can you identify how many silos are there?
2 silos, 2 bins.
Okay,
Oh, gotcha.
okay.
There's 4 silos, right?
And, yeah, and there are 2 bins.
And two grain bins, right?
Yes.
if you want to keep one silo for aesthetics, I would think that would be fine, but
Unless it's in
It's-
disrepair, falling down, I mean, and be, could present a safety hazard, you're talking about a safety hazard on private property.
You know,
They wanna
yeah.
walk around a silo falling around, not so.
If it's not gonna be a viable agricultural property, I don't see the reason to keep all of that.
Well, that and
I-
they're all disrepair. To me, what we're talking about is the waiver of buildings in excess of 2. The house and the barn and one
No
other
problem.
building, they wouldn't, we wouldn't even be discussing this. I think then we'd be discussing, Sean, right? The 10 acres, and if that was okay as a conceptual matter, and how to ensure the other buildings are gonna get demolished, right, Sean?
Right.
And that would be the discussion. What the discussion we're having now is, well, the buyers have indicated they wanna save all the buildings. Well,
Can I ask this question,
Surely.
just out of the blue? Is the reason the buyer wants to keep some of these buildings to save the expense of tearing them down?
I don't know that that's even been discussed, tearing them down. I just don't think that that's even been discussed. So to answer your question, I can't
You don't
answer
know.
it because it's not been a discussion point.
I keep looking at your considerations on your report, Sean, letter A. Whether the request for the waiver or modification, if granted, would be consistent with the general intent of this chapter.
It's not.
Certainly not intended to have 12 outbuildings. I'd have to say no to that.
well,
I just-
I would agree, in disrepair. I would also say in disrepair. I mean,
Well,
Well, you can fix anything. You can tear it down, rebuild it, you can,
but that's not fixing it, rebuilding it. But yes,
yeah, except for, we allow that. You got a house down the road that the guy wants to tear down and rebuild.
right, but that's not fixing the old house. That's tearing it
Well-
down, rebuilding it,
Same thing.
right?
yeah.
So if they tore down these extra, all the accessory buildings past 2, would we allow them to rebuild them?
Probably not.
Probably not. To your point, Dan, you would say that's not consistent with the general intent of the chapter.
And my biggest problem is it's not consistent with how the ordinance has been upheld all these years. We've got so many people that have been limited just to 2 outbuildings. Now, is it fair to
Well,
allow these people to have 13? You know, that's where I have the biggest hangup on the whole deal.
right.
I mean, I
Different
think
question.
silos are cool looking, so I don't have a problem with silos. You can always lock the door, you know, so that people can't go in it.
Different question, Sean. Does the ordinance or any other related one speak anything to the condition of the buildings or just the number and square footage?
No, but there is another section in the code that talks about. Thanks for reminding me. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up here. Okay, I'm talking about the rural character section, the definition.
In the accessory building ordinance, or
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find it here. Come back to me.
And obviously, we can consider anything we want relative to a potential waiver, but I'm just trying to probe if there's other.
Other ways to get to not consider it as a
Other ways.
waiver. Yeah.
I don't know if we wrote a waiver that says you get X years and they got to be torn down, you got to put money aside. Does that do anybody any good?
Have you used it before? I guess I would just ask that question. I mean, have you done this before, and how has it worked for you before? So if it's worked for you before,
Well,
this might be a consideration.
I think it works for the village because the village knows whatever condition that's not in accordance with the code doesn't go on in perpetuity. You know, there's a end date.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it does any good for you guys.
Here's the definition. What's called a rural accessory building.
Where are you reading from?
This is the definitions in the zoning ordinance. It says an existing building which is one, set apart from other buildings as being distinct due to its construction technique, construction materials, age, local historic significance, or design as determined by the Plan Commission and Board. 2 is characteristic of past ag practices or rural life, whether presently utilized or not for ag purposes. It's as determined by the board. The owner shall demonstrate, and this is now new language that we're putting in our update that is not yet adopted, that basically says, and 3, sufficiently structurally sound to meet minimum safety requirements for the proposed use. The building owner shall demonstrate to the reasonable satisfaction of the Plan Commission in the form of a stamped report from a structural engineer licensed by the state that the building is sufficiently structurally sound in event of the question of structural integrity by the building inspector. So rural accessory building, we've defined it. So if it can meet all those things, I think we could point to that as still being a rural accessory building because it historically significant, even if it's not used for that at now,
So
your waiver could point to that.
it's basically a bunch of qualifications, but, human qualifications, human decision qualifications, and then a approval of a structural engineer or somebody saying this isn't going to fall down tomorrow.
Right. Sufficiently structurally sound to meet minimum safety requirements for the proposed use, whatever that might be.
Right.
We don't know what the use is for any of these.
And-
besides.
We never will. Even if the buyer was here with cash in hand and said, I'm going to use it for X,
Doesn't mean he will, right.
exactly.
could be a burden on the village in years to come, but if they're supposed to
Well,
come down.
condemning buildings and going in and demolishing them and going to court and enforcing condemnation orders, yeah, it's a burden on the village. Buildings fall down. I don't think rural character means driving by farm buildings that are in states of disrepair or falling down. And that, to me, is not rural character, okay?
It's,
It's a functioning farm.
Sean, what are the buildings that were first proposed to be saved here? You
As
got
you-
building 1, 2, and 5.
Yeah, that's right, in the house, obviously. And then building 12 would have to be moved off the property because it's too close to the lot line. I think it goes with the adjacent lot here. See,
And where is the barn? Is that
this is the big one, number 7.
number 7?
Yeah.
I have the buildings to remain include the shed, the
Yeah.
garage,
Yeah.
and the mechanics building.
Yeah, that was, here's the garage, 2, attached to the house. Number 1 is the shed, and the mechanics building was number 5. Those are the ones that were going to be saved last time around when we talked. And the
Well,
rest were gonna
the
go.
garage shouldn't be considered a separate
Not an
building.
accessory building, but it's a
Because that's
building,
just part of the house.
part of the house because it's
Okay.
attached.
Right. Right.
So then we have buildings 1 and 5.
Right.
what is
That's the
7?
2. 7's the barn.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I can see some of the pictures here. That's,
Reading that report, it looked like it would probably be cheaper to put up a metal building rather than to repair that barn. Needs a whole new roof. Structural supports.
Floors,
The floor is
structural
rotten.
beams, you know,
Hey.
it needs to be rebuilt. Just scanning through that inspector's report on existing
Yeah.
foundation.
Right. I don't know. I think before I would be willing to vote on this, I would like to have Vince take a look at them.
Vince or a structural engineer.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Vince is a building inspector, not a structural engineer.
No, but he has the authority to or
Yeah.
condemn something. He knows if it's structurally sound.
I would agree that it's really hard for us to even recommend anything without, I mean, this is all we have to go by, is this bird's eye view of all these other structures. It's other than the proposed language, which we can't even really point to yet, right?
It's not in the books yet. Yeah.
And even that might not be enough.
Well,
It
it
appears to
may
have
not
the
be.
hangers
Look
on it,
at
though.
condition 3.
Right. It may not be enough, but if you had a mind to, and you were, that would be in your waiver. That'd be one thing to point to, is that we're considering these rural accessory buildings for historical significance, and they're structurally sound if they are, and rural character preservation.
Well, our ordinance doesn't, at this time, does not say it has to be structurally sound.
Doesn't
There are a lot of properties in Vernon that could be considered not structurally sound.
right. That's not. That's
Now, they're not
that's
taking
something
any
that-
action on their property, so we're not, forcing them to fix them or tear them down.
Right. It's not currently in the ordinance, but also you don't have to act on this if you don't want to either. And if you wanted to wait for it to be in the ordinance, that's up to you. Right? You're not forced to grant the waiver under the current zoning if you think it's better to wait for that new language.
Oh, yeah, no, I would opt just to go the other way. I'd make a decision, be done with it, but I struggle against, the biggest thing is setting a precedence that we don't want to set for the
We-
future.
Yeah, you don't want 12 or 13 accessory buildings. It's a
Pretty big number.
typical property.
Yeah,
This is not like the 3 dogs, 4 dogs conversation or whatever we had.
No.
right. That's a good analogy.
Well, even our village attorneys, as a particular concern, are the buildings in disrepair. Now, we don't know what the rest of the buildings look like, or I guess I would lean on getting a report, at least from Vince. Unless we just want to limit it to 2 accessory buildings.
And, right, you could simply say the 10 acres is okay, 2 accessory buildings is okay, the rest have to be torn down in some form, pick which ones you want to save and pick which ones you want to tear down, and that all has to happen before it's signed and recorded. That would be one way to approach it. So if you want to save the barn, that's fine, but then number 1 or 5 has to come down.
Well, it sounds like we should be talking to the potential buyer. So, what are his intents?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
When I said before that there were like 2 separate issues, do we have to consider this at this point in time? As to the number of buildings and the like?
Well, we can't approve if we have a mind, we're not approving any CSM, we're just looking at the concept. But when the CSM comes in front of us, we have to have a plan for the accessory buildings, because we can't approve a lot with 10 accessory buildings on it unless there's a plan for what's gonna happen to them.
But it's already on a lot that has been approved somehow.
Totally, right now, it does, if they don't wanna divide the land, then nobody cares about
Yeah,
it.
the lot doesn't officially exist right now. This 10-acre.
Yeah.
Create a new lot. The thing.
So, where did we?
The purpose of us, we're having a discussion to give feedback tonight, right?
It's feedback, right.
Nothing is on
Nothing's decided tonight,
to
it's
get
just feedback.
approved. So we could declare some intents, which could also have options. If somebody said, you know, I'm fine, you know, I'm gonna improve all of these structures, make them look like they were, how they looked in 1940, and I've got millions to burn because I just won the lottery. I guess we still have the problem with the number of buildings.
Right.
Right.
So what, I mean, I haven't been here that long. And this is kind of a unique property, right? I haven't heard any conversation really between 2 and all. All of the conversation has either been 2 or all.
I don't think anybody here can answer that.
Well,
Doesn't sound like
I'm
it.
exploring the space.
Yeah.
This is, I don't know, and it's hard to,
Well, if everything except for the garage that's attached to the house, number 1, which is the shed, number 5 is the
it's all one
repair building, and then the barn is number 7, the rest are just look like silos and bins, and that's it. So that would just bring us to 3 buildings if all the silos and bins were removed. What's number 8? What is that? Milk house, okay. So
Yeah.
that's another,
That's attached to the.
that's attached to the barn. So that could be considered part of the barn.
Okay, so with the milk house, one of the things that they're recommending with that report, if you saw it, was that the milk house could stay or it could be removed.
Okay.
And
It's moot though, because if it's attached to the barn, then it's part of the same
Okay.
building. So if you took all the silos and bins off, you just have 1 accessory building beyond the normal number. And obviously the number 12, the shed gets moved to this property.
Well, in all likelihood, we would be in favor of the 10-acre parcel. I don't see any issue with that. I haven't heard any concerns about making it a 10-acre instead of a 5-acre. Do we have the road dedicated?
In this,
That-
the roads are dedicated for this parcel.
Okay, I knew one of them, I thought one of them was, one wasn't, but, so it's really only a matter of the number of outbuildings that we would consider.
And when, right, the number of outbuildings and when the additional one or more would need to be improved by, and whether or
Right.
not financial guarantee is required for that.
Just from my standpoint, I wouldn't go along with 13 outbuildings at all. I don't see a problem with the barn and one other building, that would be within our thing. And I would go so far as to add one or at the most maybe two additional buildings because of it being a historic property, potentially. Right? If they're all the rest of the stuff is silos or grain bins, I don't think that adds a whole lot. We could, of character anyhow, one or two silos would be fine. I don't know how many you can see from the road anyhow. That's kind of one of our biggest things is what's visible as you drive by. I don't know. That looks pretty open to me though, but. So a lot of it is any of the stuff that we leave up there would be open for view, right?
Yeah. What are the ramifications, Sean, of being designated as a historical property?
Well,
Are they allowed to change
yeah,
these buildings?
this isn't on the National Register.
Okay.
Concern. Here's Google Maps. There's the barn. There's the milk house that's attached to it. You can see it.
Right now, we're viewing from,
From Maple Avenue to the north. There, you obviously can see that big silo there, right? That one's visible.
Can you zoom in on that barn?
A little bit.
Now, you're talking about replacing the roof on it. The roof comes all the way down to the sides practically.
It's pretty much the sides and the roof. Then when they talked about the foundation, they're talking about the brickwork too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, there was some talk about that.
So it looks like these two big silos are visible. The other silos are over back here, and they're not. Those aren't really visible. I'm just gonna see from other angles. No, it's hard to see.
Are the new buyers contemplating rebuilding the barn in the same configuration?
Yes, yes.
So, I don't know, having just done 4 months of remodeling, I have a different opinion. If my gut feel just trying to move forward, it's kind of like what was stated a bit ago. That I would consider extending beyond the two accessory buildings a little to support the character of the property, as long as, given the kind of perspective that we're working on for this new ordinance, as long as that, and I'm an electrical guy, not a structural guy. As long as the silos aren't about to, tip down, or if they had to make it so nobody could go in there, or, whatever, I'd give them some additional buildings, but not, I don't know why someone would need these
Grain bins.
and stuff. That's my feeling.
All right, let's, Sean, if we could, back up through here. We got, and maybe that's the nub of the issue, we really got ground down on the number of buildings and their condition, what they're being used for. how many, but just if we back up just a little bit, the 10 acres, like I said before, if they just came in and said, look, we want to do a CSM, 10 acres, and keep the house, the attached garage, we'll redo the barn, and we'll pick one of the other ones, would the plan commission, what kind of direction would you give them? Forget about the 2 limit for now, for this question, this piece of it.
Assume they're gonna meet the 2 limit.
Assume they're gonna meet the 2 limit.
All of that I would be in favor of,
Right.
and I would be in favor of allowing them more than just 2, but not 13. I'm just,
So somewhere between 2 and 13.
right.
Although
Do we-
there really aren't 13, they're 12 because of the garage is attached. But yeah.
Well, whatever the number
Whatever
is.
the number
but-
is.
The house is one of them too, so it's really not.
Right, that's, right, the house is the house, it's not an
allowed them to
accessory.
Go into the other property, so there's 10 accessory buildings.
Do we know how many square feet the barn itself is?
Yeah, that was on that sheet. I think,
Yep.
those are accurate, Sean. The barn is 36 by 120. You know, I'm looking at the August,
Oh, yeah.
the August report, where it listed out 13 structures. And that map that you keep showing, you know, 1 through 13.
Right. So that's key too.
Well, it seems like they want to restore the property, did redo the house, redo the barn, maybe keep a silo so it looks like an agricultural.
That view of the barn with the big silo that we just saw,
It's kind of nice
That's
looking.
kinda neat, yeah.
I can
It's basically
agree with that,
3
but
accessory buildings.
all the stuff that you really can't see
Right,
from the road.
not close to 10, but
Right.
3.
Should probably go. I don't.
So Mario, what do you
I'm
say?
good with 3.
You're good with 3?
I'm good with 3 right now.
Right now. Dan, what do you, Jim said 2 to 10, or 2 to 11, or whatever he said. Dan, what are you thinking?
I have seen no problem with 3. I don't know if they can get down to that. I don't.
Sounds like if it was limited to 2, we'd give them conceptual approval for their 10 acres, despite the issue on the west side, and we understand that. Sean, what other issues, assuming that it was just 2?
That's
Then
the
we'll go to
only,
3, just to-
yeah, the only issue is the west side of the property and the future development potential. I think it's possible that would have no problem being developed with a road and, you know, maybe 1 acre lots that uses some of the density from the larger parcel. No guarantees, I'm not confident, but if it's not used for that, then it could be used for open space if it's developed too.
Right,
so.
it's just gonna make it more difficult.
It'll make it more
because You're gonna have a
difficult.
road, as the developers will come
Yeah.
in and say, having a road with no houses,
You're not gonna get a road in the west side of that property without houses on it. You can't afford to do that.
can't afford the road.
Right.
And that's the issue, we're pointing out to Porterville and the Porters about the west side of that piece of property.
Right. There's a chance that you might not be able to develop in the future the west side of that property. And if, you know, you're okay with that, then just, obviously the east side, you can get a road in off the east side, that's gonna be no problem, but, you may not be able to do it on the west side.
So as you had said, Sean, what that can be used for, though, is space, and that's kind of what we thought we would use it for, was green space, but you also said that there could be 1 acre lots there that a home could be built on.
You might be able, depending on the topography and the engineering and how it all works out, maybe.
So-
Maybe, the septic,
Yeah.
the water well and
Right.
septic and topography, like you said, and you have to borrow density off the back, but that's possible.
Right, that's part of the way it
You'll
works.
just have bigger lots in the back.
Yes, yes,
So that's it's possible. We're not saying you can do it.
yeah.
But just be aware that
Right.
it's, maybe that isn't developable on the west side in the future.
What else we got then before? we
That's
get to-
really the only issue.
I think we've expressed all of our concerns. I think it'd probably be advisable for you to talk to the new owners and
Potential.
Right.
get, or, see what their wishes are. Tell them that we're not happy with all the buildings and most of them are gonna have to go. See if
So-
they're still happy with that. I don't.
You could bring this 10-acre CSM back to have it drafted out, bring it back and have a plan, something between the 2 and the 10 accessory buildings that's gonna satisfy everyone's concerns. That's the idea.
Now, what about, this land now that, I think one of the things that you said, that it's going to be, have to be put up for approval. So when would that happen? Not until the CSM is turned in, or?
Say that, I'm not understanding what you.
And so, in other words, there's going to have to basically be, I'm not sure what you call it, where this is going to have to be approved, and it's going to have to be put out for public, that the 5 acres that we are developing, because that's gone into another section of land.
Oh, the 10 acres, the rezoning.
Yeah, the rezoning.
Yeah, the rezoning will have to come with the certified survey map. We'll have to rezone the portion that's RRD5 to AD10 to make sure that this whole parcel is zoned
Okay.
consistently. So that'll be part of the process. It can happen at the same meeting.
Yeah, okay.
That's not a significant issue, though.
No, it's a public hearing,
Yeah.
but we're going from the RRD5 to a less dense category. So I don't think it's going to be a concern to anybody.
Okay.
Right, and the other thing that needs to be kept in mind is, even with 3 buildings, that means, or 4, whatever we end
Whatever
up
they
at,
are.
where, you've heard the plan commission say, well, maybe 3. At 2, I think you've got the green light to proceed. At 3, maybe. Anything more than that, it's more problematic, but we still have the issues of proof that the buildings are repairable by a
Right.
structural engineer. I mean, I think Vince can go in and say, yeah, that one's not gonna
Well, does
pass.
this not
But
satisfy the barn, though? Is this?
Well, I haven't had a chance to
No,
read it. I scanned it. I think the barn's gonna be rebuilt. To say
From the
that
foundation up,
the
it's gonna be
foundation might be saved, but everything else is,
I don't
seems
know
to
if
me
it's
is almost.
financially feasible, but
Right, but that's not, that's not us.
Vince,
not our
I don't know
call.
if Vince can
That's
tell you
not
that
us
either.
to
though.
decide.
Vince is not going to be able to go in there and say it's financially feasible or not
It's-
either.
Right.
But
But
it's-
as far as the other buildings, but there ought to be, somebody needs, private third party needs a structural engineer to tell us, because there's issues of going past 3 from the plan commission that I've heard.
Yeah.
And to me, if you go past 3 or even at 3, if the building's not structurally sound and can be repaired, then we shouldn't even be talking about granting waivers, period.
So anything you want to say beyond the shed, the machine building, and the barn, we're going to need more assurance that it's structurally worth saving.
Was the machine building attached to some other one?
No, that was number
5.
Okay.
Where I am now. Yeah, that was building
5
5. Yeah, shed, building 5, and then the barn. So anything beyond those 3, and obviously 2 attached to the house, needs some structural assurance that it's worth keeping.
And then,
And still no guarantees.
and there's still no guarantees, and then the financial guarantee of whatever is approved, make sure that it happens. Whether that's a cash bond, letter of credit, for the cost of demoing these structures, or,
That would be what it would be. It would be the cost of demoing them if they don't get improved by a certain date.
right, and we never got to that certain date because we don't have information to even begin to even consider it.
But that
seems to me.
can be discussed when they bring the CSM in. We don't necessarily have to determine that tonight.
Correct. That's right. I'm just trying to, like,
Those are the issues. Right?
articulate it. So we don't everyone walk away with, what was decided?
Well, and I guess that was the question that I was going to ask, if I can receive some type of a summary of our meeting, the key points. Is that something that could be done?
I can send out an email after the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be something that continues to keep us both on the same page and know what we need to do when we have our next meeting.
Is one of your proposed buyers in the audience here?
No.
So they will need to know that. I mean, they may say this is,
They can watch YouTube.
yeah, they could,
They can watch the whole meeting on YouTube.
that's true, they could do that too.
Yeah. So. Okay, so,
Okay.
again, if I could get a summary.
I will be happy to do that.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Board, for the time and all of the great discussion on this. By the way, I just want to mention the meeting that we had in August, and you suggested that the 1-acre parcels, no, the parcels that were not 1 acre, that they be moved to 1 acre, you know, and you said, you don't have to do it, but it's just a suggestion. And so one of the parcels has been moved to 1 acre, the other one not. So we took your suggestion and we did that.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good.
Thank you.
Didn't understand that one.
Yeah,
What? Okay, so Sean, you're going to follow up with an email.
I will do that, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it's semi-clarified. Number 5, discussion of the Halverson House conditional use permit. This is on the agenda to pursuant to the two-year compliance review. The intent of requiring a review is to, this is the attorney comment, requiring a review is to create a record as to the status of the operation. Conditional use is subject to compliance with all the conditions. Any action to modify or terminate then will require special procedures, and we'll get the, if that becomes an issue, we'll have to get some legal advice, if it becomes an issue. So Sean, the Alexes are here, I see them. And you want to tee us up?
Sure. So the Alexes run the Halverson House event barn and bed and breakfast in Vernon. Karen, would you mind putting the overhead up? Here's the property at the end of County Line Road here. It's basically a 120 acre property, but the conditional use was issued essentially for about 9 acres here, where you see the trees and the home and then the barn buildings and so on. So this is the operation that was approved. It was approved back in September 2019, and then it was amended in June of 2020 for the event barn and bread and breakfast. In my staff report, I included the original conditional use permit that was issued and amended. As part of the deal for the conditional use, they also had to combine, this was smaller parcels previously, and so they had to combine the parcels through CSM. They got approval for signage as well. My staff report mentions that was 2022. That's a typo. That should be 2020, March of 2020. So that's what happened then. And then after all the conditions were satisfied, the conditional use permit was executed in September of 2020, and they were up and running. Following a complaint about the operation in terms of the use of the operation in October 2020, the Alexes responded to the complaint, wrote a letter to the village giving their side of the story in terms of what they determined, how the property, they expected the property to be used, and I responded with a letter in kind that clarified what my interpretation of the use was, and they appealed, and the Board of Appeals took the matter up and hired a hearing examiner to look at the matter, and the hearing examiner sided with me as a zoning administrator on that, and so that determination from the hearing examiner is also included in my staff report. So that's just a little bit of background about how what has happened and how this came to be. The actual conditional use permit that got issued had a requirement that the CUP be reviewed every 2 years by the Plan Commission to determine compliance with the conditions and requirements of the permit, and may be terminated in accordance with Section 300-22A 9B of the Code of Ordinances. They have to request this biannual review by submitting a compliance report at least 60 days prior to, but not more than 90 days, to the 2-year anniversary of the issuance of the conditional use permit, and then every 2 years thereafter. Failure to do so may be grounds for termination. So, as I mentioned, the permit was executed on September 17th, 2020, and the petitioners did submit a compliance report on June 29th, 2020, which was in that 60 and 90-day window, so that was fine. The village requested additional information after they submitted it, and there were some staffing issues and some scheduling issues, and so it got delayed to this meeting. But they did submit it on time, and so they're in compliance. Before the occupancy permit was issued, they were fully in compliance with the site and the grounds and the buildings. Everything was up to snuff there. The building inspector attested to that. The village clerk administrator also prepared a memorandum dated August 4th, 2022, that outlined the county sheriff's department response to compliance or issues, the building inspector, and then the fire department's response as well. The petitioner's report that's submitted, I have just summarized what's in there, and I'm assuming the petitioner is going to speak to this a little bit, but there's a narrative in there about how they've complied in their compliance. The well approval is in there. That was required as part of a condition to get the permit. The sanitary system inspection report's in there. Our signage approval's in there. Their liquor license is there. Their operator licenses. Waukesha County's environmental health bed and breakfast license is in there. The incident report from the sheriff's department of an occurrence on August 14th is in there. And then the petitioner also prepared a detailed event calendar and compliance matrix, which has listed all the events since the conditional use permit was issued. Looking at it hasn't attested to meeting all the conditions that were in the report in terms of security and attendees and what type of event it is. And looking at the report, since the determination was made by the the hearing examiner at the Board of Appeals, it appears based on how the events are described from that point forward that they do comply with the use of an event barn as it's described in our ordinance. So that's where we are today. That's all I have.
The Alexis, could you just state your name and address for the record?
Michael Alex, SNW 23450, County Line Drive, Waterford.
Joy Alex, same address.
Thank you. I presumably we're supposed to review this. Hopefully all the Plan Commission members reviewed it. And
I noticed
Would
that
you
there were just a couple of items from the initial August review that weren't in the e-packet that might have been received. So what I did is I just printed off copies of that so that everybody has that to be able to reference it. It has, Sean's staff review, all of that information. So I've got copies for everyone that can.
Mike, are you talking about my draft staff report or what?
No, this is, I can show you. It's just that, it's the e-packet.
Oh, yeah.
It's the e-packet. Because I saw all of those documents when they were either submitted or given to us, and I couldn't decipher the e-packet because it kind of just ran from one to the next. So what I did is I just tabbed it out with each item, tabbed out. So I can give each copy of that. And then you'll see, I know on there, the items in red are items if you just opened up the packet that you received for the meeting, they wouldn't have been in there. So a couple of important items, I know Sean mentioned the memorandum from Karen, as well as the fire chief's email, the compliance matrix, even that compliance matrix that Sean referenced wasn't in that 11.9 e-packet. So if that was the first time you had heard that, it's because you hadn't seen one, I would presume.
Oh, I wasn't aware. So you're saying this, Karen, would you mind flipping that?
Yeah, and again, maybe it's different than the e-packet.
So the matrix, that the last thing that we asked
The last
for.
one, exactly.
You submitted this and it wasn't in the e-packet that went out to the plan committee.
Yeah, maybe they got a different email, but.
I did forget that, Mike.
No, that's fine. And that's why when I didn't see that, I kind of just combed through and saw that there were a couple of those other items. Like I said, the Sheriff's Department review report, the Fire Chief's review report, the complaint, and then I added one item, the original conditional use application opposition petition, that I can kind of speak to as to why I wanted to include that.
Thank you for this.
yeah, I guess I wasn't aware of that either. I do have your matrix. I did look, and I
Yeah.
had some questions on your matrix, but if no one else is.
Yeah, and I don't know how you
I'm
would
kind
have-
of stumped now, if no one else is actually.
Yeah, 'cause you
reviewed the
haven't been-
Matrix, because I thought that was,
Yeah,
of your submission, this was, to
From
me, the most
September.
helpful.
yeah.
Because
September.
we're reviewing your operations. This is your logbook of your operations.
Yeah. And that's why, having not seen that, I wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page to be able to see that information.
Well, thank you for that. So that was not disseminated, unfortunately, here, the matrix. Okay.
So as you're kind of paging through that, and I just wanted to kind of address it because it was, you know, a large part of the discussion up to it is talking about the times in which the use of the venue was called into question. As you see, based on the timeline, the complaint was in October. The determination from Sean regarding those was in February. We ceased any events that were in question at that time. Not even, we didn't wait until the Board of Appeals was done. Once we were, you know, formally told, no, this is our position, all of those events ceased at that time and have not, you know, occurred since. So just to clarify that.
Okay, so one of my questions then, while we're on that subject, how many of the events are on here that pursuant to the hearing examiner's conclusion would be in violation?
That would be, Sean would have to determine that. As far as the ones that I believe he would be referencing, yeah, I mean, do you have?
Well, it would have been, I mean, I'm assuming the harvest dinner was one that, based on our determination in terms of self-inviting, you know, people could sign up on Facebook or whatever it was to come to this. I think that would have been in violation. I don't know what the family Halloween is exactly. So I can't speak to the ones, you know, in 2020 here. I'm assuming everything, well, so the harvest dinner was October 22nd. Right, that one appears to have been in violation, but that was before the determination. I don't know about the family Halloween or family New Year's Eve.
Winter farm dinner, Valentine's dinner, I don't know, Sean. That's why I was asking you, you know, which ones were self-invited. I mean, well, you know, we don't have to rehash.
I don't know, but I don't know if it
We don't have to
matters.
rehash the whole
I don't know if it
thing.
matters because once the determination was made, then, you know, the ones after that all appear to be,
Yeah,
in
yep.
compliance.
Right. But it's just setting the record that these
Right,
are in
there was a
non-compliance.
period
of
when,
time where there was some non-compliance.
Retroactive, I
That
just,
stopped is what you said.
yeah, and what I just wanted to say is, nothing occurred after we were given the determination that, no, these events are in question. Because there was a long period from October, when there was a complaint filed, until February, when the determination letter was given. So that kind of purgatory period, we were saying, we need some direction, and both sides wanted some direction. And then in February of 2021 is when the directive came down that said, no, these are what we're deeming as in violation. So at that point, we stopped and we said, okay, well, now we need to talk about those events. So that's why that timeline is important.
I would just add, even those events after the harvest dinner, those were had in communication with Sean in terms of, you know, we were, you know, if we would have heard at any point that those events weren't allowed, they would have stopped at that point. But again, pointing out, we didn't hear until February, even though this was apparently in discussion. So we weren't told, no, they're not allowed. We were told, you know, an event is an event is an event up until when we stopped them.
So that just gets the timeline set for those items.
so they're before us now attesting that, you know, everything after that point meets the definition. They've included each condition as part of the conditional use permit and saying they have satisfied each of these conditions. Don't have evidence otherwise to say the contrary. So this is really just establishing the record.
Right.
And I guess the
So
one.
let's go back, let's just say the timeline once again, you know, it's a 2-year review, 2021.
Yeah, it's right in his Sean's staff report, if you want to go
Okay,
right.
okay,
It's
okay.
October of 21 is when there was a formal complaint filed, and the formal complaint is included in this packet.
Okay, this is the second paragraph, Sean, following.
Right.
October 2020,
And
letter
then-
prepared February 21, that's the zoning administrator letter.
Yes.
And that's what
Correct.
you're, and when did you cease
at that
When I
time.
got the letter, they.
Okay, so okay, so that's,
That's,
I was
yeah,
just trying to draw-
establishing the
I was just
timeline.
trying to draw the line on the matrixes.
Yep,
So it essentially is just the first 4 events that might have been in conflict with the definition,
And
but,
up until we received that notification in February, we had no indication that any events we were holding were in any type of
right.
violation.
I mean, we didn't, I didn't know, well, one, I didn't know which events you were holding, right? We didn't know. Once you got the conditional use permit issued, you're off and running, so that was fine.
All I was saying is, they weren't held, like, knowing.
In defiance.
yeah, exactly. So the other thing, the biggest thing that I would say to show that we've been in compliance, and this is why I included item 6 is the original conditional use application opposition petition. There were 104 people willing to come, and some of you were on the plan commission at that time, to be able to say, we don't want this in our neighborhood. This is not going to be conducive. This is not going to work. Since that time, we've had one formal complaint. I've included that, and that was regarding the use. Since then, we've had the one sheriff's report incident. That incident could happen at any location at any time. The biggest testament to the fact of what we run as our operation is someone pulled a gun at the event and there was no incident whatsoever. There wasn't any physical altercation with any other guests. It was one mentally deranged individual. Within a month of that time, there was a school shooting which killed 30 people at a place where they have, armed guards and security, and you have to walk through a metal detector. It could happen there. It happened at Quick Trip in Vernon, an armed robbery. Unfortunately, we live in that type of a world where that can happen. Like I said, the biggest testament to us is that it didn't materialize into anything beyond that. Along with that, going back to the petition, we've been under a microscope, whether it's, with oversight here from the village or oversight from neighbors. And I think we've passed with flying colors. We have people who are on that petition who have either been attendees at events, that have hosted their own events, or that have just come and said how we're a benefit to the neighborhood as opposed to, what it might have been portrayed to at the beginning, so.
Now, did everybody get this report? I know I read it, and that was the only incident, the one
And I
you're
don't think
referring
that
to
they did, that's why I included that
Right,
full
saw it in there.
incident report in this
Okay,
one.
okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to make sure everybody's got the same information. I think that's my view anyway.
And to
An
give you-
isolated event,
Yeah, and to give you an
given,
idea of.
given the number of events that you've had.
Yeah, and to give you an idea of what that event, that's our personal home. So my kids stay on that property, and they're on that property at those events, so we have, interest in that. And not only that, but our concern is for our neighbors, and Joy literally called up neighbors saying, we're having this issue at our property right now. We are trying to get it under control. We want you to know that this is happening. So we were very proactive in that, circumstance. And I think we, did a very good job as, an organization to be able to handle it, especially in, what really was our first year of operation. And, we haven't had any issues since.
How about, you started your matrix as of September 17th, 18th, 2020. How about events that occurred prior to that?
Events
Do you have
such
some?
as,
Didn't you have a wedding there earlier before that?
yes, there was wedding. So the conditional use was granted on September 17th.
Right.
That's when it was signed. So
Right.
we, up until that point, were an applicant. And the item that you're addressing, President Ford, in your original complaint, you're talking about the Flater wedding. That was a personal family friend that had booked with us to be able to host their event. With the issues that we had getting our approvals, as well as just the general construction process during COVID, that pushed timelines back. That being said, we had made a commitment. I had given them my word that I would do anything that I could possible to allow them to have their event. As it became time that event was not going to be able to happen by the time we were granted our conditional use, We told them we can't accept any funds for this. This is a gift to you as our friends. They're friends from church. They're friends in the homeschool community as well. So at that, we did have that event. Prior to having that event, I called the village here, spoke with Karen. I said, is there any type of one-time permit that we would have to have in order to host an event, a private event at our property? There isn't. We were not a permit holder at that time. We did not receive remuneration, which is a requirement of receiving that. Since that time, and when I was asking, well, if we were going to have an event that we're describing, yes, it was a wedding. It was for a personal friend.
And
The
what day
comment-
was that? What day was that?
Let me go to your complaint, and because 8/14. Excuse me, 8/14.
8/14 of 20?
Or no, just wait. Let me. Here,
If
I
it-
didn't
if
make.
it was July
Karen, can you?
24th, if that's a Saturday. Yeah.
So
And-
at that time, all that we were a liquor license holder in the village. At that time, I didn't want to compromise our liquor license in any way, shape, or form. We did not sell any alcohol. We did not receive a rent payment. We did not even allow them to bring alcohol onto the property in fear of somebody saying, you're in violation of your liquor license. We hosted a party at our home. If you're asking if we hosted other parties, I have had 5 kids at the time, 6 now. We had birthday parties. My grandma both grandmas turned 90. During that time, we had people over for that party. We had Christmas parties. I have a big Polish side of the family on mom's side. We had probably 100 people for that. If you're asking for a list of all of those events
No, we're not
prior
asking
to
for that.
September 17th, I can do that. The implication that we're trying to operate has got to stop. It's got to stop.
No, that's not what I asked. There was, and you've explained one wedding.
Conditional use.
I thought there was another
Requirements
one,
here.
the Nichols perhaps, and you also had a school dance. Again,
Nichols
you could
Flair
say
was
The
same
Nick-
way.
the
Nichols
Nichols,
Flat is the
Because
same
school
one.
dance was
Okay.
not held until we had our conditional use permit.
Didn't you have one in 2020 in August? No? Yes?
what are you asking?
School dance.
A school, everything else is on
Everything
that
else
matrix. It was,
Wedding at their home.
Can I ask,
We're
Why
just
are we
trying,
even-
we're just trying to have the record, that's all.
why are we even talking about events that happened before they were issued a conditional use permit?
Thank you. That's what we've been asking.
I think the president's just trying to, if there was,
he's trying to pin us to sign something saying that we hosted events illegally outside of the conditional use. Since then, Thomas Bird has had an event at when I was talking to the clerk about, we're trying to have this event, Thomas Bird had his daughter, I believe, her wedding at their barn. Since then, John Maney had Eric Severson's event at their barn. Just because you're a barn, just because you have a party, doesn't mean that you need to have a conditional use. There was no remuneration. We weren't a permit holder at the time. We've been a great corporate citizen. We've been great residents.
It's sad that we get attacked rather than, thank you, you have not only done what you said you were gonna do, you've gone above.
Okay. We're just trying to establish the record.
But that's
Okay.
not what it has
So the
been.
record starts at 9/17. Let's talk from 9/17
Okay.
forward.
Okay, I asked the question, do you have events, you explained them. Okay, you explained them, Nichols Flager, July 24th, whatever it is, no remuneration, personal friend. No one is asking about your private birthday parties for your children, anything like that, okay? There's school dance, I asked about the school dance.
What school
In Au-
dance?
in-
Can
in
you
August
reference
of
where
20
you're?
In August of 2020. If there wasn't one, just say there wasn't one, that's all. I'm
No.
just asking, okay?
There were dances held, but nothing had been held until after a conditional use was granted.
Okay, so there wasn't one in August of 2020 is what you're saying. Okay. And we've talked about a general public thing, and you've explained the sheriff's report. And I think, Sean, wasn't there, did you have a charitable event? You've had charitable events there, which is fine.
Correct.
But one of the-
Events in which organizations have been the renter.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we can't host a charitable event.
Right. And I think part of, and at those charitable events, Sean, you and I talked about it at one time, whether they, the charity could sell something like a private, like,
Oh, because in the definition, there's a clause that
Such
says
as
items
trade
not,
shows.
items not for sale, trade shows, that kind of.
anything for sale. And so I think, were there things for sale at that charitable event?
Can you define things for sale? I don't mean to be
Well,
crass, like,
mean,
I
it's
don't
right
want
in
to,
your conditional use, you can't,
what,
well, a silent auction, the person is selling things at a silent auction, okay? The organization is selling things. That's in your conditional use, okay? You can't do that.
I'm trying to think of the charitable.
I think it was the liver thing.
Yeah, the
I got
Community Liver
solicited.
Alliance, they
had-
did have auction
They had an
items.
auction running at the same
Right.
time. It had been running the week before, and it ended during the event. So it was open to, did I even say that? The auction was opened to the general public because they put it on their website. The event was not open to the public. They had a guest list. Everyone that attended was on said guest list. It was rented by a renter. They had an auction that was running prior to the event and concluded at the event. It was an online auction. Nothing was being like, there wasn't a bid on this here. There wasn't a sign-up sheet to bid on anything or to purchase anything. It was an auction running concurrently with.
That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, we're just asking for clarification. You're clarifying. They were not selling at the event.
It was not a trade show.
It was online. No, we're not saying it's a trade show. I don't think
That's
that's,
what the
you're
definition
limiting,
use
that's an
says. It
example of
says-
someone selling.
But it says events where goods or services are offered for sale.
Sale.
So
And
Is
you're
it-
saying
is it a
they're
sale?
offered for sale online.
Yeah,
Right?
but can you define what a sale is? So a sale is, what if it's a donation? What if it's, I'm going to buy this, there is a value associated with it? Like, what is a sale? Are we allowed to sell alcohol at our premises?
Sure.
Okay, so to just ask a blanket question of, were things for sale? That's why we're not trying to be or like, we just want to understand the question, so it's not and again, a gotcha moment. If there's a real concern that the CLA event had wares for sale that would violate it, I would hope that the village would say, oh, hey, let's talk about this thing that might be a gray area and clear up that gray area instead of try and having a gotcha on the gray area to say, well, we're going to get you on the record that says that you had items for sale. That seems a little bit backhanded to me rather than just being upfront and saying, this is a good event. Let's figure out how a charitable auction can happen rather than not. That's, I guess, my point.
Right.
Well-
I think a charitable auction is a different thing than a
Right.
trade show, right?
And we
That's
talked
different.
about it at the time, Sean,
Yeah.
and the village you as zoning administrator took no action.
And so,
I-
and so
Yeah, so that's-
if we modify the language at some point, we should clarify.
Yeah, and I guess we were never made aware of that until tonight, just so that the rest of the plan commission, so it seems to have been a discussion at some type of staff or board level, or,
It was staff level.
Yeah, it may have been.
Yeah, a
discussed
staff-
at that
it was a
level.
staff
I remember
level.
when we talked about it, but
Right.
it was
yeah, and so
way
just
back
keeping
when.
that
Way back when,
communication open
that's
with
all.
us as the operators is helpful instead of retroactively at the 2-year review to be the time to bring that up, I guess, is a little bit of the, catching you off guard type of thing.
Well, we didn't mean to catch you off guard. You know what happens at your events, so, or you should.
I didn't know that the discussion was happening at a staff level to say, are these events kosher or not for
This would have been way back when the whole thing was,
When was the Liver Alliance one?
I don't know, when was it?
I could go in the matrix, but you seem to pull it out
Why?
immediately.
I don't know when it exactly
This is
was.
along the
Wasn't it
same lines
September or
as-
something?
We didn't know any of the farm dinner events weren't kosher until that was brought to our opinion in February. If there are discussions happening on our property, which seems to be interesting that they continue to happen at a staff level, but never expound beyond that to the rest of the commissioners or to ourselves, how are we supposed to know until we get to a point where we're sitting in front of you and you start saying, what about this, what about this, what about this? If there's a communication amongst the town or the village, again, understanding, I would hope that the village could say, hey, what you guys are doing is good, let's continue to see that happen. Why is it oh, but wait, what about this one? Oh, but wait, what about this one? And then we don't hear about that until we're sitting here.
I don't recall any discussions except when the whole use issue and the complaint happened and the determination happened. So it would have happened in that time when we were generally talking about the use.
Which was before they were
I don't.
given the
remember that.
final ruling on the conditional.
That's my recollection. I don't remember discussions after that. I don't remember.
Correct, we haven't
discussions-
had a zoning
We haven't talked about the property
administrator
since
since,
back in.
So why are we talking about it?
Right.
this is
I-
just to set the record, this is a
Well,
compliance review, that's
You've
all.
got the record there, right?
Right, this is the
Okay,
record,
so
right.
have there been any violations of the conditional use since the determination by the,
Not that I
by,
know.
We're aware of, right?
okay.
No, even the sheriff, Ward
You know,
said he'd come in here and testify what happened and how exemplary they were with the incident, and
I understand there were some misunderstandings in the beginning, but since John Fuchs made his determination, it's been
Yes.
up to
As far as we
par.
know,
It's
right?
been,
Okay,
it's
so
been
lots of
perfect
compliments.
as far as we know, yes.
Right.
Lots of compliments.
And
Right.
as far as we know, is our attesting to it, and everybody else who keeps us under, you see what type of microscope we're under? And if all we have is one complaint filed by one individual,
In 2
I
years.
think that's a great, vote of confidence to know, hey, they're doing the right thing.
At some point, again, we would welcome, appreciate support rather than opposition. And to feel that by, by all of you would be appreciated. Not only have we more than followed through with everything we promised, we have been an asset to the community. Those that live around us that, as Mike pointed out, may have signed their name to a get out of my backyard, now say, get in my backyard, and I'll be
I
there
want
right
I want
next
your
to you.
backyard to be my backyard. I want to be over there. I'm going to come over to you.
So
I'm not
if-
going to try and
if-
shelter
If our
myself.
neighbors who sign their name to a thing that first start out by saying, get out of my backyard, can come around and say, hey, what you're doing is great, it would be more than appreciated to see the officials at our town level get behind us and say, hey, what you're doing is great, and let's see how we can make this continue to happen.
Okay, Sean, what's the next step?
There is no,
There is no next.
there is
step,
not,
there?
that we don't, if you guys all agree with what they're attesting to, and there's no issues here from the time that the determination was made, from Nick, or from John Fuchs, as you mentioned, then there's nothing to do. They've submitted their compliance report. If everyone nods they're in compliance, then in 2 years they come back.
We don't need any motion on this, or
I don't know if you wanna, I'm not sure what the motion would be.
a roll call?
Motion to
Something or-
what? I mean, we don't have to accept the report or make it.
Acknowledgement of the report, maybe.
You can just acknowledge it, that,
Motion of support.
Okay.
There you go, motion to support the activities that are going on.
That's
there.
completely out of order, okay?
Yeah, just acknowledgement,
Okay,
just so
so-
we have on,
We
just.
we could, obviously,
Can't you just
We-
say by consensus that the plan commission,
Well, I guess
well,
we're talking about.
We've acknowledged that the report, if you want a motion to acknowledge that you've complied with your
I
your
would-
review,
I
that's.
would-
Because if the whole point was
You
to
know,
get everything into
yeah,
the record,
I-
getting it
right.
into the record by saying we're acknowledging that they came, that this meeting happened, we had sufficient material, we believe what they're saying.
Yes.
I think
That-
that's what.
that's
we
essentially it,
need.
that we have no evidence that
I'll
they're
make
not
that
in
motion.
compliance. We have no evidence that they're not in compliance with their conditional use permit.
I have faith
Right.
that we should know it. If they're not compliant, we should damn well know it before the 2-year meeting. I mean, we should hear
Well, we
the
would.
complaints.
Well, we would.
If they're wordy.
What- The
Right.
purpose of the 2-year meeting is if there's been a series of complaints that would call, and there hasn't been. There has not been.
Okay.
And
There has
also it
not
gives-
been a series of.
But it also gives the village a sense of, okay, there's this many events out there, just to know what's going on in terms of.
Right.
Yeah, and they're,
Right,
and just so
and
you
this-
guys know, there are intermediate ones too with the liquor license review. That's an annual thing. There's, the health department is through every year for bed and breakfast, for the bar
Right.
service, for the kitchen service. All that type of review still happens behind. the
Well,
scenes.
some of those are just renewals of permits and the like.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to this, a conditional use is kind of perpetual as long as you don't violate, the conditional use.
Right, the purpose is this, is to look at your operations on a 2-year basis, and if there has been incidents of non-compliance, and you've explained everything, that's,
Yeah,
then it's done. I
Even
mean,
if there's violations or inadvertent violations, it doesn't mean the conditional use would be terminated. We just want
Right.
to know what's going on. Yeah.
We just want to know what's going on, and this is the 2-year thing.
So how
Sure,
do
if
we-
there is incident after incident with the county sheriff there was one isolated incident in 2 years. That would be different, okay? To me, it would be different, and that's the purpose of this.
So how do we
I-
document that they submitted their information and
Well, it's all part of
we
the record,
reviewed it
but we-
and
It is, but it might be a good idea just to make a motion that you accept.
Because
you
right
accept-
now-
You accept the compliance report, and there's no evidence to indicate that there's been any violations
Can-
since the determination.
Can I have permission to just say a reason that I,
You want to make that motion, Jim?
Yeah, I just did.
Is there a second?
second.
Okay. We got to
No,
get going,
I'm-
Alex, okay?
Mike, yeah.
Mr. Alex, sorry. This is Alex. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Got it?
So is that 3 ayes and 1 opposed? Or is
Oh, it was
that,
4-0.
okay, I heard
Yeah.
opposed. Thank you for your time.
Hey, is there any truth to the rumor that your family has grown?
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Congratulations.
Something. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Craig,
Not here.
they're not here, and Sean got a report, and I think you're going to,
Yeah, I wasn't here last month, but if you recall, there was a certified survey map for a lot on the east side of the Craig's property, north of Maple. It was tabled at the time to change the lot and fix some technical problems. We're not ready to bring that forward again. They're not ready, but due to the timeline and the statutory requirements for review and approval, they have granted us an additional 60 days for plan commission review and 90 days for village board review. I expect that CSM will be back at the plan commission in December. So that's it. So I'm recommending that you table it again until next
okay, so
meeting.
I'll make a motion to table the final certified survey map for Dan and Nicole Craig for the property located at S104W26630 Maple Avenue.
Second?
Discussion, because they made it, they signed something, they have a written.
They have a written
Okay.
email, yes.
And so, when is their new times, Sean, again?
I'm thinking it'll be December.
Okay, so they'll be back here in December, and they've extended us till when?
A 60-day extension for plan commission and a 90-day for the village
For
board.
the board, okay?
For discussion, are we gonna look at these certified survey maps or?
No, because they're changed. Well, the one's already been approved, so the one you shouldn't even have.
Okay.
The western one?
Remember the
It's been-
Craigs they had a parcel.
The western
and a
one.
Parcel west,
Yeah.
right? And we approved,
The western one's
The
been
west.
approved. It just needed
Okay.
technical updates, so you shouldn't even be reviewing the western one again. You've already approved it.
that one's already been approved. Now, they were coming in for the eastern one,
Right.
and they've extended that one, right, Sean?
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Didn't we reduce the right-of-way to 33 feet?
Yes.
But
yes.
there already was a 50-foot dedication?
No, the 33-foot dedication's already happened. They had a 50-foot additional 17 feet that wasn't necessary.
They had it shown on their original certified survey, but the property next door shows 50 feet here on this map.
I know, but we're not requiring 50 feet.
Is there actually a 50-foot dedication there?
Probably.
There probably is in some locations, but
County road.
it used to be a
years ago.
county road, but it's not anymore. So our official map shows it as a 66-foot right-of-way.
Okay, so some areas we do have a 50-foot.
It was dedicated in the past, yeah.
Okay, now this is lot number 1, the western one.
Okay, we've already reviewed, that one shouldn't be discussed anymore.
The other one's lot number 1.
They are different CSMs.
Okay. What is the 33 feet on the east side of the new lot then? Have any idea?
I don't have it, I didn't think we'd be talking about it, but let me pull it up. My apologies. I thought we were just gonna table it and then we'd talk about it when they were here.
Well, just to get it straight in my mind, I question that, but seems like there's 33 feet between that eastern lot line and the section line.
Just give me a minute to pull it up. And there's a bunch of deficiencies on it that I've already told them about that they have to fix, so what you're looking at won't be the version that comes back.
Oh, well, I didn't.
But I don't know if this is one of them, so let me.
Are we questioning the surveyor on it, or?
No, there's a few technical things. One of the things that That's
Looking at.
that's a strip of land.
Looks like there's a strip of land here.
There is a strip of
33
land.
feet.
Yeah, that's not theirs.
It's not there?
That's not their land. That unplatted lands, you see where it says platted?
That's the Porters, isn't it?
Looks like it was a dedication or something.
No, see, it's unplatted.
Yeah, but it also says 33 feet here.
It is. It's the driveway to get back to the properties back here.
There's an easement?
There's
Is
a,
that what that is?
it's their land. To get, it's Porterville land.
Okay.
And so they have a driveway that comes through there to get back to the houses that are back there. But it's not the Craig's land. Do you understand what I'm saying?
All right. So it's not a dedicated right of way?
No, it's not right of way. It was 33 feet. I think at one point in time it was planned to be part of a road, but that got screwed up.
This-
You're looking on the east, right?
The
That's
very
the-
east
that-
side, yeah.
That's a driveway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a driveway.
There's two houses, one house back, two houses back.
Two houses back there that share that driveway.
And that's on the east side, right?
Yeah, but it's
And that's
not,
what we're talking about tabling right now, the east side.
that's right.
Okay. I just didn't want to get off it yet.
Right, so not their
Discussion
property,
done.
not their property, not right away, right.
Right.
One of the other things, since we're talking about, is that we wanted the was on the west side across the way.
Setback?
There's no dimensions for setbacks. We need to see that. I
Right.
haven't, that's got to be updated. The accessory building that's out there now should be labeled and dimensioned too. That's not.
And
CSI.
that's been communicated.
That's been communicated.
Okay.
So
Okay. Enough.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Public hearing. Okay. Plan Commission recommendation to the village board to set a public hearing for the Village of Vernon draft zoning code amendments. Everybody should have had
we worked on that
this.
all year. Yeah.
Worked on it. Sean, this August 16th draft is what we're talking about.
That's the latest version.
Recommending to the village board to set it for public hearing, right?
Yeah, it's been done for a while.
Because this is what you've done. Macy's looked at it. Those changes are in this draft.
Yeah, the last time we talked about it was in August, if you recall. I mentioned that the attorney had some comments.
Oh, yeah.
The attorney had some comments. We talked about it that night. This is the last draft of it. After that, it just
After
got,
the August meeting, right?
right after the August Plan Commission meeting. I made changes the week later, and so that's what you have here. I'm not going to go through everything we changed because we discussed it ad nauseum. Unless you want me to refresh your memories,
Gail said no.
but
No.
unless you have questions or comments about anything,
What was this about?
yeah.
What are you talking about? Was there an election yesterday? Hey, I missed it.
We do not have to belabor this, but the next step is to bring it to a public hearing with the village board. So
Is this on our website now? The public can read it?
No, because you haven't said it.
This,
Once we set
this
the
is.
Document.
once
The
we set the
document is,
public
okay.
hearing,
Right.
Okay.
so we're just
So-
looking for recommendation to move it on to the board.
Do we really expect anybody in the public to read it?
Well, they might, and it should be available if they want to.
I mean,
I don't
oh,
think-
yeah, that's,
I don't necessarily think it's going to draw a lot of interest, but it should be available for those that want to look at it.
Oh, absolutely. It should be available. It should be,
And it has to be. If you hold a public hearing, it's got to be available.
yeah, and it's already available even though a public hearing hasn't been set.
Right.
Now, just, so the village board needs to set a public hearing.
Well, I don't know how you want to do it. Yes, you can recommend this to the village board.
Just,
Yes.
well, Jim and I are part of the village board, so we need to know what
You
we
don't,
need to do
well, the
next.
plan commission doesn't set public hearings for the board. The board
Right.
sets their own public hearings.
Right.
You need to recommend it to the board to move on to that step.
Okay, so the motion would be for the plan commission to recommend to the, wow, it's practically written.
To recommend.
Recommend to the village board to set a public hearing for the Village of Vernon draft zoning code amendments, I don't know, dated August 16th, 2022?
And also recommend approval of this, because this is your chance to, to recommend approval of this document. Wouldn't it be?
As
Well,
the
how do
planning
you recommend
commission?
approval
Well,
without the public
The-
hearing?
Well, the plan commission's gonna be at this meeting too, correct?
Well, wouldn't the,
it a
wouldn't the
joint?
plan commission, based on the public comment, then would say, oh, maybe we should make this change and then we'll approve it, as opposed to approving this?
right.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the board's gonna approve this. They can't, if anybody approves this before the public hearing, why bother having the public hearing?
Well, the plan commission could still
I'm for
recommend,
that.
if you had a mind to, you could still recommend approval. It doesn't get ultimately approved until the board has the public hearing and considers the public comments, right? Could do it that way, but the problem is that you don't want the public hearing at the board and then comes back to the plan commission again, and then back to the board again. We'll never get done with this. So if the plan commission's going to be at the board meeting where this public hearing is gonna be held, then you can recommend approval at that time.
Well, that's what I would think.
yeah.
I would think the plan commission would be at the public hearing.
If you're doing it that way, then that's perfect.
Because what if there's, okay, we're not anticipating any big issue, but what if there was a big issue? And the village board, in its infinite wisdom, says, well, send this back to the plan commission and figure it all out and then bring it back. I mean, it's possible, but I'm not anticipating anything. And I would agree that these are not necessarily controversial.
So the board meets
issues,
when?
so
Next time?
Thursday.
Thursday,
So on Thursday, the board could take this matter up and set the public hearing date for.
right, if we can figure out a public hearing.
Could be
Date
could be
and
the
a
next plan
location
commission.
too, right?
Well, it could be here.
Could be here, depends on how big the crowd is. And I don't, that's what I wanted to have a little bit of discussion,
Okay,
You know.
there might be a crowd.
right? I don't know. I mean, that's part of it, right? If there's gonna be a crowd, then we need a bigger venue. If there's not,
Right.
well, I suppose we could set it for here, and if there is a big crowd,
Put them in the garage.
put them in the garage, or,
Could do overflow
or we
valve.
just adjourn it to a time and date certain and have a backup.
Yeah, yep.
Karen,
Yep.
have a big room backup for a future date in the event that we need it. Otherwise, we'll just do it here,
Yeah.
is what I was thinking.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could hold a public hearing.
Well, if you say how many pages are in that document, nobody will show up, so.
Right, too daunting.
154, no, plus the matrix.
I knew it was over 100, but
154 plus the matrix.
So I guess what we're asking tonight is to just move this on to the board
Right.
for a public hearing.
So I would make a motion for the plan commission to recommend to the village board to set a public hearing for the Village of Vernon draft zoning code amendments as
They
Or
dated.
blah, 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 blah. Zoning code amendments dated August 16th, 2022. How's that? So we know what the document we're talking about.
I so move.
Okay, there's a
Yeah,
there's a
I thought you
second.
moved.
All right, well, I made a motion. Dan will
Dan
give you a
seconded.
second.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Second.
whatever.
Any other discussion?
No.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Village President report. Newman Hine proposed development. We did get something from the administrator at the Village of Mukwonago to Karen. Of course, Karen's,
Again,
you're not going to be here. So this is,
but I did meet him.
this is on Brad's plate to meet with them. Now, Newman has not, they're not jumping up and down or calling me anyway. Let's get going, let's get going.
No, but they're real pleased about the discussion. They're
We've
real
had a
pleased
very
about
good discussion, right.
Mukwonago's
Right.
is now embracing talking to Vernon, and they love.
What are they
Vernon's
up to?
ideas. No, they really, honest.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, really good.
We did have Sean and I had a good meeting with Fred Schnook and Fred Wachowski and their planner, who's
Tim Schwecke, who's their
Tim.
consultant.
consultant, or he was kind of.
Interim planner,
Yeah, I don't know if he was,
He's still helping them out.
he's still helping them out. And we had a very good meeting, actually. And we had a good meeting about the border and making sure,
Are-
no lots were in both,
Yeah.
part in one community, and the Newman people adjusted it right, almost to less than a quarter acre, I think. I mean, it was their proposal was very good about that, and it's been in Mukwonago's court for sewer and water. So if they're not willing to extend it, there's no issue for Vernon whatsoever. If they're willing to extend it, then there'll be an issue for Vernon in setting up the water utility or
A separate district.
sewer district. I guess it would be a utility district.
Right.
And Macy's done them. John Macy, our attorney's done them. There's several samples.
Oh,
Summit's got 6 or 7 of them or whatever with
East
city.
Troy has a great one.
Yeah,
That's what we
so
talked-
there's precedent on how to do it. We're not making it up. So, and there's various ways to do it, and I think the details they're looking at is exactly what model to use, who's gonna, you know, how it's going to work, billing wise and that kind of stuff, you know. But those are details more than, the big thing is, are they willing to extend it? And if they're past that to talk about details, then I think they
I
are
think,
willing.
yeah, I think they are willing to talk about details, and the village administrator now wants to move things forward and get things kind of hashed out before he brings it back to the board. So he wants to get the documents at least drafted in a certain format, but he wants to do it with the village administrator, which,
Right.
you know, we're kind of in the middle right now, and so we're waiting for the new administrator to come on to move that forward.
Any talk about border adjustments
Just for individual lots.
or individual lots?
Well, if you've got.
Yeah, it's gotta be
subdivision,
jogged, right? It's gotta be jogged a little bit.
It's gotta, if you've got a subdivision plat and they're drawing lots,
Yeah,
if they're drawing lots how they would like to sell those lots and build out the subdivision, that might not necessarily match exactly with the existing municipal boundary between Vernon and McGuanago. That boundary,
Right.
in
Each
my
last-
view anyway, if we're gonna do this, needs to be adjusted slightly so that if I buy lot 22,
it's all in one
it's either in
community or the
McGuanago
other.
or in Vernon.
Right, not split, huh?
Right, not like I bought, yes,
The figure
Annexation
annexation
where-
where lots in Vernon and Big Bend.
two tax bills,
Okay.
and yeah. Yes, and
And
we're
they
trying
were-
to avoid that.
They were in agreement with that, or is that?
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes, and there was a diagram, well, it was conceptual.
Is that,
Conceptual where the Newman people actually tried to do that.
is that hard to accomplish? Is that?
It was, really was, I thought it was a very good attempt, don't you, Sean? You saw it.
Technically, like,
Yeah.
formal process for doing it, I'm not even sure
Well, when I talked to Attorney Macy about that now some time ago, there is a process to it, but it's not, it didn't sound to be that onerous because it'll be by mutual
Yeah, but
mutual agreement between the
imagine
two
you have to have
villages.
some type of a description
Right.
drawn up and.
Oh, yeah, there'll be technical
Who
issues
pays
like
that
that.
cost? That Newman or?
Newman would, it's all be a chargeback.
It's part of the plat process too. I mean,
Yeah, but the plat process can't change the municipal boundary.
right.
Right. So that'll be some kind of cooperative boundary agreement plan,
It will be an exchange,
Agreement?
basically an exchange.
a detachment of some land from Vernon and some land from McGuanago,
And
relatively
villages-
equal
villages
amounts.
can do that.
And villages can do
Make
that.
the border a little jagged by lot.
Right.
Well, the way they drew those lots, it was pretty smooth, the border. So,
Yeah,
well,
Okay,
you saw that,
Yeah, and
that
it's-
diagram's around here somewhere.
right, and it's real easy to do with village to village.
so
Right,
it is
a lot easier.
proceeding.
It is, but I get the sense that the village of McGuanago wants to move a little bit faster on this. So.
Okay.
Fred Schnook has been asking, well, how do we make this happen? How do we?
Well, we had a
Gotta
little
wait, you gotta
staffing
wait.
issue.
He knows.
He knows,
Yeah,
he
he
knows, and but he's under the impression that the new administrator is gonna start next week, so he was,
Yeah,
I'll let him know. I'll let Fred know.
so you should let him know he's. it's
Hang
gonna be-
in there, Fred.
Right.
okay.
Right, so that's the report there. The other ones are just for, nothing's happened, checklist for development, models developer agreement.
Oh, but I do have the conditional use.
Oh,
There you go.
oh, you have the one for everybody, Karen?
The only thing is I do have to tweak a couple things with Sean later, but I color coded them based upon who responded back, what's annexed, what's somebody
What do we have here?
died, you know.
This is
A
unbelievable.
list of conditional use permits.
Like a million.
This
Oh,
leads into one question I have.
no,
I know we have a bazillion, now we know how many bazillion, conditional use. How come this is the first meeting that we've ever had on a review?
well, that's what I was gonna ask. Are there other ones
Well-
that should be reviewed?
Oh, my-
There might,
Well,
there
well,
might
this-
be.
This one with the Halverson House, it's specifically in there. CU.
Yeah, we specifically added that condition because we knew how controversial it was.
but
Right,
they're in the other, they are part of many other conditional uses.
There may be.
Yeah, the only thing is there's more research that has to be done, like the campground has changed hands, I don't know how many times. Vernon Presbyterian Church, the church is now closed, the daycare, they're coming to you with, you know, I mean, there's gonna be changes. A lot of the, if something's changed, you know, when you read it, but I just have to tweak a couple things with Sean. But this goes back, you know, it started with the county, and where you say no information, the county initially, you know, doesn't have information on it, see.
Does some
No,
of these
and I-
people still own these properties?
Right, a lot of these might be terminated
Yeah,
by
you can
default.
see, yeah, you see the
because-
blue, you know, you gotta get rid of them.
Oh, okay.
The green ones are, the county did so many, and Vince wants to get rid of all that minor, they, conditional uses for minor land.
Minor grading
Yeah, minor grading permits, those,
Oh,
or major
you know,
grading permits.
but just take a look at it and, you know, I
Do you
mean, at
have a
least you
color
have.
code somewhere?
On the very last pages, like, you know, the coding, you know, what.
no change in use and next to another
Right.
municipality, no response.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Very bottom.
Blue ones consider termination,
in the
the green
corner,
is
huh?
minor.
Yeah, that's very tiny.
Oh,
So minor grading was done by conditional use, Sean?
Oh, yeah,
Karen?
yeah.
Yeah, the county still does it that way.
They're real
Well, actually, no, it was major grading by conditional use.
Well, they
that
had the
did.
minor too.
By conditional use?
Yeah, yes, ask Vince.
So where's the major grading by conditional use?
I don't know if we have, well, the golf course has one. That was a big.
Morning Star,
But regardless, once the
would.
grading is done, then
Yeah.
there's no need for the CU anymore, right? It happened, it got graded, and so it's done.
oh, right. So shouldn't that just be terminated at that point? They don't get to do minor grading continually, do they?
You know, and the funny ones are the DNR ones. The DNR ones, they were real.
What's the
unresponsive.
DNR ones?
They did conditional uses for the dams over in the Vernon Marsh. And I, you know, because a lot of these people I contacted to see, and they said, well, that's, you can't answer that question. It's like, well, it's in our community. We granted you the conditional use. And they said, well, the dams are working fine,
Oh.
but, you know, I mean, those are just questions I had. They weren't snotty, but they weren't very,
yeah.
Are these in order of issuance,
yeah, the dates.
the dates?
Yeah, they go back to.
Take all the damn pictures you
Take off the damn thing.
want.
But
So-
you guys, like I said, I just want to tweak a couple things with Sean later, but-
1959.
Yeah. The school, the Vernon, the
So
schools in there.
all the pink ones are in another municipality?
Mm-hmm.
Have they been made aware of all of these? The other municipalities?
Well, I know the ones that went to Village of Big
It
Bend,
doesn't apply anymore because it's our zoning.
right.
It only applies under our zoning ordinance. So if it's not in our community, it doesn't mean a thing.
I just wanted you to know which ones are here and which ones are gone. You know.
Yeah.
Sound good?
That sounds good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
this is pretty interesting.
That's awesome.
Let's bring those dogs in.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, and it'll be easy to clean up. I would,
So what's the next step, do you think, on this?
Mr. President?
What's
I don't know,
a,
Sean, I don't know what the next step would be. Let's talk to
A new administrator.
the new administrator and Macy and you, Sean, and figure it out.
Gene Schuster?
Okay.
I mean, this was the
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah, the first step.
It's
I
nice
mean,
to have a history.
Some of these can be wiped off, like the pink ones, we know they don't apply anymore, we don't care about
Right.
those. But
And
it's
the
good to have the
ones that-
record.
Yeah, it's good to have the
If
history.
if they can be terminated, terminate them.
Right, certain ones that are,
If there's people on here that have sold their property and
Dead.
somebody,
Or
I mean,
dead.
it might,
There's a lot of dead people.
somebody probably should contact the ones that we don't know about and figure out, is anyone still there anymore?
Oh, I have.
You have?
yeah.
Yeah, and if they haven't, everybody got a letter. Everybody, even if they were dead, they got, the property owner got.
Okay.
Dead people got letters. They might have not responded, but, I mean, letters went out to all these people.
People
and-
did respond.
I
some
heard
responded.
yesterday that some municipality voted in somebody that was dead.
Nice.
Did they have a conditional use?
How did we get a conditional use for North Lake Yacht Club?
I know, that came from the county. It's not even in our community, but it was.
Darren, is there a column in here where it says, if someone contacted you back and we know it's not, they're not doing that use
Yeah, the
anymore,
ones
that
that-
it's no longer
Yeah,
in
the
operation?
highlighted yellow ones are people that contact, where it's white, there was no, even
Response.
though a letter went out, there was no response back to the village whatsoever.
So no, what does no change in use mean? What does that mean, no change in use?
Well, the yellow means that they contacted and they said, yep, we're doing everything as their conditional use states.
So they're still operating under the
Right,
conditional use?
yep.
So it's just the yellow that are still operating as conditional uses.
And considered termination is, we haven't heard
No
back
response,
from
no
them.
Right, right,
information.
and the white ones either, didn't reply back or, didn't reply back.
Or are we gonna have somebody check on the ones in white that didn't respond back?
Like
I
the
don't-
town of Vernon didn't respond
So-
back to me.
So, really. So honestly, anything other than yellow might be no longer valid.
Right,
Well, I am
Might
looking
be.
at
Might be, might be.
might be.
the ones
Some of
that
these
didn't
people, I'm thinking,
respond.
are
You've
still
got
operating.
German Shepherd, Dog Club, that's still there
We still
and
know that's
still
there.
operating.
Yeah,
But-
and that's a conditional use that goes, as long as you, abide to the conditions, it goes.
It's not to
property.
operator, yeah, it's not tied to the operator.
Right,
So it sounds like the blue ones probably are no good anymore.
Right.
The white ones, we don't know because they haven't responded.
right. Yeah, so I.
Except the ones we know for sure are still, like you mentioned, the dog kennel. And then the ones in the back are some that I just provided you information on.
Yeah, I just want to tweak that a little bit more.
Yeah, those are not color coded yet.
Yeah, the very back page that are, when we.
Those look like the new one.
They're new, yeah, those are all new ones.
Yeah, so there's gonna be tweaking there, guys. So I just want to get that done before I go. But it's a nice historical document, don't you think?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
And then we can
yeah.
just tweak it and make it,
Was Soto sand and gravel on Pine Court?
yeah, I couldn't get any information on that. County didn't have any good information. But they did say the 75 boxes.
Where would that have
that
been?
we have, that we have to scan and go through. It might be in there.
Well, but if it hasn't been used for, what is it, a year, Sean, then it can be.
If it's
terminated.
discontinued for 12 months, yeah. it's-
Right, 12 continuous months, you
Yeah.
can, it's deemed discontinued, isn't it?
I have to look at the language, but it could be.
Yeah.
Could just be automatically terminated, yeah.
Right, that's how I think it reads now,
Yeah, oh, the conditional uses now compared to what they were before,
right?
night and day. But at least it gives you something to read.
Yeah.
Well, very commendable.
Thanks, guys.
Attaboy, girl.
Thanks, guys. Carol, did you want? Carol, did you want to hold off on the October minutes?
Well, I think.
I
the-
just changed the verbiage on Sean.
I just think you just need to make,
Yeah, I did.
to say that, just write the
yep.
word report in there. Because I think Warren's in there, I mean, you
Yep,
could.
I did-
you
I
could-
did change
You
that.
could search for Sean's name. Next up on the agenda is October 12, 2022 Plan Commission minutes.
Yeah.
We're just making sure that they're correct. And Sean wasn't there, so.
Right.
That's why I just said, can we search for Sean's name and make sure he's,
There's a reference in my staff report.
Right.
yeah, and we changed it
And
to,
that's what I said.
and then we
Was
just,
Orrin
all we
reported
have
on Sean
to,
Malarkey's
staff report,
dated blah- that's
then we're
what-
fine. I mean, that what change was
Right.
not in here, but it's made, so
Why don't we just,
to make a
Approve
motion
the
to approve
minutes
it with that
as
change,
modified?
as modified, as revised at the meeting.
Was that your motion, Jim?
Yes, ma'am.
What are we modifying?
The minutes, just to make them correct with Sean's name, not having Sean's name in it, because he wasn't there. He had somebody else from his staff.
Orrin?
Well,
Yep, we approved July
we
2 days
acknowledge
last
that he
meeting,
was here,
September
Orrin.
14th.
Orin was,
We
yes.
did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Sean
what I
wasn't.
changed
Sean's
it
name
to-
is in there.
Yep,
What I changed it to, Dan, is that Orrin Summit reported on Sean Malarkey's report dated blah, blah, blah.
yeah, that's all you
That's how
really
I
need
put
to
it.
do, yeah,
Okay.
because it was Sean's.
Yes.
But otherwise, we're fine.
Otherwise, you see anything else in here?
I didn't.
Okay, with that,
Okay.
who's, we
I
have,
made
made the motion.
motion,
Do
do
we
we
have a second?
second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
One of these days I'm gonna say aye.
He could do that every meeting, I think.
It's adjourning.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
There you go, Mario.
my bag's already packed.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Opposed? We're adjourned.
Oh, I forgot my mouse, my new Bluetooth mouse.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Careful, the deer are out. Now,